Nivedita,
Sir?
please, you may start.
Okay, sir. Good evening, all. I, Nivedita Tulsian, research scholar at School of Management, NIT Rourkela, welcome you all to the second day of our FTP titled Earthwise Transforming Climate Action and Sustainability for Better Tomorrow. I am honored to warmly welcome Mr. Chaudhry R.J. Kumar Mishra, Manager CIF South Asia Region Bureau, Veritas India Private Limited. Currently overseeing environmental audits and stakeholder engagements, he is an accomplished ESG assurance manager with extensive experience in sustainability, corporate governance, and environmental compliances. With a proven track record in ESG reporting, strategic management, and leading assurance processes, he excels in driving sustainability initiatives and ensuring regulatory compliances. He has also contributed for renewable energy assessment at EWS Kolkata, research consultant at Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations. Passionate about promoting sustainable business practices, he brings a deep commitment to environmental and social responsibility. We are glad to have you here with us and eagerly waiting to learn from you. Sir, please.
Thank you, Nivedita. The introduction was much exaggerated, but yes, of course. I do some of my work in sustainability, ESG, mainly in the reporting and compliance side. So, before we start, really start the session. So, can we have some interaction uh, with the audience? So, how many of you can just raise the hand or any mode? So, Nivedita, you can check out. So, have you all seen a ESG report or a sustainability report by any corporate? By any chance? Anyone?
Participants kindly interact.
I'd love an interactive session. That brings to. Oh, great. Abhinay has raised his hand. Okay, of course. Okay, so what is the first thing do you uh, see in a sustainability report? What exactly it is? Nowadays, we are moving towards integrated report or VRF report. Have you heard the term called materiality assessment? Anyone has heard about the term materiality assessment, if at all? No. Okay. So let's materiality assessment is basically the first and primary objective of a company or a firm to assess where it stands. Okay, the status quo of of ESG. Okay, it tests about how it can how what are the topics of importance to them in in long term, in short term, medium term, and long term future. There are several forms of materiality. We'll learn as we go. So let me share the screen so that is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So materiality, it's like companies, there are several things. There are there is a universe of topics that are important to this world for ESG. Like for E, we can have GHG emissions, water emissions, or then waste management, anything. For social, we can have CSR, we can have human rights, labor rights, diversity and inclusion. Then equity and inclusion. So many things we can have. And similarly, for governance, we can have, a corporate governance, then ethics, then whatnot. But a company should understand what can be its, you know, uh, priorities at first, when suppose I want to do with the ESG compliance, how to get started, what is the basic thing, what I'll do. Yes, anyone? Is I heard some noises. Okay, no issues. So, what exactly we are trying to understand is we need to understand that if I, as a company, want to do today, that I want to get compliant with some ESG standards, I want to get my company certified, I want to do a ESG, roadmap ahead. Okay. So today is day zero. What should I do? Normally, corporates, what they do is they take a standard, a basic standard, that is maybe GRI. Normally, it is GRI. Maybe in some matured industry take up SASB, TCFD, CTP, and all those things. But they start with GRI. GRI is one of the basic and open standard. Uh, Two forms of GRI. One is GRI in reference to, and one is GRI in accordance to. So there are various nitty-gritties of the standards. If sometime else we can talk. Then why materiality? Then they first see what are the topics that are important to them in short term, medium term, and long term future. In all of the universe, there in the universe of ESG, there are many topics. So topics under E, S, and G segregated, companies do take specific topics of importance to them, what normally is called materiality. Material topics, not materiality. The assessment is called materiality assessment, but the topics are called material topics. Typically, you would see. Uh, uh, let me show you a report so that you can understand. Just a second. I'll show you a report of a very large company. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, great. You can see these. So these are Nestle's material topics. There are around about 20 odd material topics. You can see all these material topics, and they are listed in fairly in a matrix form. So what these material topics hold, that is, if you see negligible, moderate, significant, and major, what are these? So the topics are aligned to the effect they have on the corporate. Okay, like here you'll see animal welfare is negligible. So in moderate you have several topics like business ethics, community relations, a governance structure and mechanism. Then in significant, then major. So the topic of importance here, the importance does have a negative and a positive. Suppose I am doing very good at some time or very bad in something, that can have also implication. So how to do these kind of assessment, how to really you know come up with such a matrix, because these metrics really drive our ESG. And this is the first thing I'll tell you. In day zero, when a company starts its ESG journey, they do a gap assessment according to a standard and conduct their materiality assessment. This is the first thing they do. So let's now understand. Is my screen visible? Yes. So there are, now there are, normally there are, three kinds of materiality we have. One is finance materiality, impact materiality, and double materiality. Finance materiality, if you see, finance materiality is often done by either, investing firms, VCs, venture capitalists, giant venture capitalists, PE investing firms, or, banks also. In India, normally banks do not engage in financial materiality. I would say that they do impact materiality. Financial materiality has, the ESG factors on their financial performance. Harbhajan Singh, good evening, sir. So ESG factors, on their balance sheet, each of their factors in balance sheet, each of the variables in their balance sheet. Okay, what are the ESG factors that are influencing? So in that case, finance materiality is quite, relevant to the fund. You can see the entire BFSI sector. Okay. When we talk of impact materiality, coming to the second one, impact materiality holds good for everyone. So everyone can do. So it doesn't have a, sectorial thing. Why finance materiality is only see, finance material can be done by everyone also, but typically why it is done by this BFSI sector is because they're largely into either credit, debit or debt, or any, kind of financial transactions. So hence it becomes quite important for them. Then comes impact materiality. So impact materiality does not really cover the financial, world. Right? So it doesn't have a financial, implication on the topics. So whatever topics you choose are important to you, to the corporate at large, okay, to the corporate or to the site at large, but less significant or least significance to the financial consequences or the financial implications, or it doesn't impact your balance sheet or P&L account. Then comes double materiality. So what we do in a double materiality is we combine both financial materiality and impact materiality. This is the practical way. Okay, people will say outside the, there are several definitions according to standards, outside in, inside. How do you impact to outside world? How the outside world impacts to you? So double materiality is the interplay between the outside world and your own company. So in that case, double materiality holds a very, robust way of reporting and robust way of reporting your, material topics. Plus, it has a significant, uh, what I say, a significant value for what you are disclosing, okay, to your stakeholders. So let's understand one by one. And there are there are standards, there are standards like GRI, SASP. They really promote double materiality. Even GRI nowadays is promoting double materiality. Even double materiality is promoted by BRSR to some extent. But in Indian context, if you see, it's only the top 1,000 companies who come up with a materiality. And I would say only 10, not even 10%, 5% would be doing the double materiality, because these companies have, are really in, multinational in nature, and they have international transactions. So double materiality holds good. Even double materiality helps them to get international debts. access to international bonds, cross-border green bonds, green green finances. So it helps also, and it also helps the corporate, the double materiality I'm talking of, in gauging both ESG performance and their financial performance in a cohesive way. So in that case, double materiality holds a very robust structure. Impact materiality, you can say it's the basic one, and then finance materiality, it has only one side of the disclosures. Let's now go how to conduct a materiality. If I see, most of you would be a research scholar or academician or in a corporate. So when it comes to you know uh, how to do, it's more of a research thing. Conducting materiality is more of a research thing. I would say you'd be really happy, most of you would be associated with academics if possible. You frame a questionnaire in the Likert scale, and then you float it to different stakeholders. Then you assess the rankings. So this is how it is done in a larger way. But there are several other ways. The ways, the nitty-gritties are there. So let's go one by one. So as I told you, why ESG materiality is relevant. So to take strategic decision making, regulatory compliance. So, of course, regulatory compliance comes to in European context, but not in India. Risk management, of course, you assess your risk. You assess your risk towards what is going to happening to you in context of ESG, okay, and how you are going to mitigate. If someone has seen a BRSR form, you would see the material topics, the risk in the topics, the risks and the opportunities. So if it is a risk, how you are going to mitigate? You have to disclose the strategy to mitigate. If it is an opportunity, what is the opportunity? You have to disclose that. So in BRSR also there are several disclosures you have to. Of course, investor confidence. If you are good at risk management, a investor, especially in the foreign investors, the Western investors will take greater interest in your firm. Then stakeholder engagement. When the word comes stakeholder, so I just want to know from the audience, what exactly do you mean by stakeholders? Anybody can say.
So a person who is in the well-wishing of the company, he may be a shareholder, he may be a supplier, he may be a customer, he may be any directors or employees, or maybe who are involved in the organization. Sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, he's quite right. He not a well-wisher, he has got interest in the company. Everybody cannot be a well-wisher, sir. So, he has got some interest in the company. In a broader sense, stakeholders can, we normally, differentiate like internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. If the audience may come, who are the internal stakeholders for a company?
Sir, employees.
Employees. Then board of directors.
Board of directors, and external stakeholders, suppliers, customers.
Customers. So suppliers, some segment of suppliers. Suppose I would say a contractor having a long-term engagement. Suppose someone is a labor contractor. Okay, he supplies labor. So sometimes he's treated as in-house because he supplies labor for you, 20 years. Okay, so long-term contracts, long-term, suppliers are often treated as internal, stakeholders. Long-term, I'm saying long-term contractors. Short-term contractors, short-term suppliers are external, of course, external. They are, the only thing there is one time. Suppose you want to get some typical raw material once in 2 years. Okay, some additives kind of thing. So, is external. But if you have a regular need on daily basis, suppose I would say, uh, suppose let's take a steel plant. Okay, the primary raw material is iron ore and coal in India at least. So coal and iron ore are two very primary requirement. They almost constitute 70% of their procurement. So they are quite internal to them. Because on daily basis they come and uh, you know uh, uh, they procure these raw materials, without which the company cannot function. So they are considered as internal stakeholders. External, they need some parts, heavy machinery parts, once in 2 years. So some you know companies come and supply and they commission and do that. So those are in external. Is the look, so how do you, for external stakeholders, how do you suppose local communities? So local communities are external or internal stakeholders?
So they are internal, sir.
Local communities, how can they be internal, sir?
Because actually the every CSR depends on the local community of the company. So that means that if they want to do some CSR activities for the well-being of the people, then the company has to include them as a local people.
Okay. Sir, one thing I want to say. When I took the example of a supplier, long-term supplier for iron and coal, while making a decision, okay, while the company takes a strategic decision, okay, suppose I want to enhance my production, so I need inputs from these two suppliers, iron and coal. Suppose take a steel plant. Okay, in my very strategic decisions, do I need to take take in consideration the local communities? Internal.
So of course, for taking a decision, not necessary, sir. But actually, any company depends on the local community, because but for any externalities and all, definitely the local communities has to help them, and it should not affect the local people.
Yes, of course, it should not affect the local people. So they mostly, if you see, they are considered as external stakeholders, but one of the primary stakeholders. In a very integrated steel plant or an integrated plant or a large manufacturing which holds a city in, so normally they take CSR, the local communities as their internal stakeholder. Otherwise, a standalone. Suppose we have a special economic zone where there are many factories. Okay, so there the local communities are considered as the external stakeholders. So why I said this, because the perspective of the company of defining stakeholders should be defined, and I cannot flip flop after defining them. So it is quite, while doing materiality assessment, we have to take care of this first. Okay, materiality, before starting the materiality assessment, we have to define the stakeholders first. This is one of the, because that's why I stressed upon stakeholder engagement. Defining the stakeholders and their interactions with the company, how regular it is. If you see in BRSR also, and I suppose in principle 8 or 9, I forget, and I'm forgetting, but it is there is a table. What are the the stakeholders and how regularly do you communicate them? Quarterly, fortnightly, monthly. So what is there, and the way you communicate, how you communicate, through newspapers, through emails, through open arena town halls. So how do you do that? So that is also important. Why they have stressed upon, because to really see how important is that stakeholder to you. Okay, sometimes you also see, not sometimes, every time you'll see that the importance of the stakeholder is very much while taking a strategic decision. Strategic decision, once suppose I have to expand my production, of course, my suppliers have to be, I have to take consideration the supplier, if they can supply or not. Suppose I want to expand my, facility. Of course, there are local communities come into play, because I want to take lease land. I want to expand. I want to expand my boundary. My boundary will be expanding. I'll have some other facilities coming out. So I have to take the consent of local community. I have to engage with them. So that's why, the purpose has to be there when the stakeholder has to be defined. Great. Now let's go to the materiality. So here, there are, standards, I have tried to, address what are the basic, the standards, but then let's go one by one. Materiality has been defined very clearly in all these standards. Guides, step by step how to do it and all is available in your internet. But how we do it, as consultants, as assurance provider, what we check. Let's see. So let's go one by one. Impact materiality according to GRI. I'm specifying according to GRI standard. Yes. The definition itself says it focuses on organization's impact on the economy, environment, people, including both positive and negative effect. As I said earlier, the materiality would not only have the topics that are positively important, but negatively also. So that is how we will rank. So in this case, um, I don't know how many researchers are there in academic researchers. This is quite interesting, while because I come from some part of my career has been research. So this was quite interesting because I started my journey through impact materiality of of an IT company. In ESG, I started my journey. My first job was to do impact materiality of a top three IT company, one of the top three IT companies. So that was quite interesting. So while doing, let's check the steps. The first step, the thing is identify potential ESG issues. Under that, conduct stakeholder engagement. So who are conducting stakeholder engagement means first you will define who the stakeholders are. I have taken examples of employees, investors, regulators, NGOs, and communities, but you have to define the group and who all are there. Suppose in employees also, like suppose what there will be employees who are permanent and there will be employees who are contractual. Okay, those things have to be defined very clearly. Investors, okay, we have to see who all are our investors. I cannot and for investors and also employees and every stakeholders, the categories have to be defined first. So I cannot suppose one share of a company, even that I am an investor also. So if you see if you hold any stocks, even one stock if you hold, the company will send all their annual or quarterly material to you through mails. Okay, even if you hold one stock. So that's all. So regulators, yes, of course, there are government agencies who regulate things. So those are one of the stakeholders also. NGOs and all. So we have to define the stakeholder first. Then in the process of identifying potential ESG issues, review industry reports, sustainability trends, and regulatory requirements. I have also written something, use of frameworks like SDG and UNGP that impact areas. So identifying potential ESG issues, how to do it in a very practical way. Let's understand. So while what we do is, in the first step itself, suppose I am the sustainability department of a company. What I do, I defined the stakeholders, then I drafted the entire ESG issues that are important to the company. The entire, maybe climate action, GHG emissions, scope 1 emissions, what not, I drafted. Okay. Then what I did is I checked my peers, what my peers are also doing. Is any of the peers have already done a materiality issue or not? Okay. Then what are the topics? That is one consideration. Then what are the standards saying? Okay, there are standards who have defined suppose cement sector, steel sector, or agriculture or commodity sector. You have a certain set of uh, material topics that have to be considered, that must to be considered. So in a tabular form, your list, the industry peers, what you have, the list, and again what the standards is, okay, or the framework is. Then you have a good correlation. Then you put on a good correlation. Then the master list of topics come. The master list of topic comes. So when the master list comes, you internally evaluate. How do you internally evaluate? You have. That's why you will see most of the companies, they have a sustainability or a ESG committee. So the committee evaluates, they discuss that is these topics really relevant to our corporate or firm. Then there is a refinement in the topics. So once the final list comes, I go to my stakeholders. I go to my employees, I go to my investors, I go to my regulators, NGOs, whatsoever. These are my material topics. Now they come with suggestions. You can add that, you can delete that. And then I take a small survey. Initially, I'm telling you, initially. Then you take a small survey. After doing that small survey, you come up with a list. That list becomes permanent. Then we have to measure the significance. Upon each of the topic, we frame questionnaires. Remember, the questionnaires have to be uniform across stakeholders. I repeat, across stakeholders. Otherwise, your topics, suppose there is a topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. You framed a questionnaire and you gave it only to HR department. They will say it is very important to us. So how will you gauge? Suppose there is GHG emission and you floated it only to environment or EHS department, environmental health safety. They will say that is very important to us. So how will you say that this topic holds importance? So every topic will be important. So the topics, all the topics should be the questionnaires of all the topics should be floated, should be asked to every stakeholder. Then only you get a good matrix. Then only you get a. Of course, while doing that, most of you are researchers and all. You have a, suppose the total stakeholder universe for you is 1 lakh. You cannot float it to 1 lakh. You have to take a sample size. Okay. In sampling also, we, it is quite the judgment of the consultant and the sustainability committee and the department. The department, of course, takes a call. Let's go to 20%. Let's go to 10%. Let's go to 5%. Suppose the company total stakeholder universe is 5,000. So they they can go up to 20%, 25%. Normally, it for very large company, it floats around 10 to 15%. They do not go beyond that. So they do not go beyond that. So very large company, very large IT companies, 5 to 10 lakhs, they stick to 5% because it's really impossible to get the data. Because getting data from external stakeholders for a questionnaire is quite a challenging task, because you have to the department has to take the pain, not take the pain, they have the responsibility of following them back, because you have a deadline. You run across a deadline because you have to complete the materiality assessment, then you have to go for reporting and all. And reporting in India has a strict SEBI deadline, so you cannot go beyond that. So hence, we try to address whatever whatever sample size we can. I've given you a normal industry standard as far as I have worked on, but still, there are companies, there are large multinational companies, they even engage with more than 50%, because they have a robust ESG structure. They have, the employee engagement, the stakeholder engagement is very robust. So hence, they could attract, large data collection. So that they can arrange. The companies, I'll tell you, multinational companies like Microsoft, then Shell, then British Petroleum. These all, they really have a very robust, bottom-up approach of data collection. So they exactly know, they exactly know how the data flows. They understand the nitty-gritty, and they have created that stream also. The flow of bottom-up approach of data is quite robust. So hence, companies do that. Why we need, and the sampling has to be uniform also. I'll tell you, suppose we are taking employees. Okay, I'll talk about the sampling. Suppose we are taking employees. So employees, we have lower management, middle management, upper management, the top management. So each management has to be catered. So each category of the stakeholders, each subcategory and sub to subcategory of stakeholders have to be uniform, so that the issues that you are trying to address gets everyone's attention, every category's attention, and you get a good materiality assessment. You get a good, the matrix is quite robust, and you have short term, medium term, and long term goal fixed. So that's why conducting materiality assessment is one of the first thing you do, and that is why it is so important, because it takes time, but once it is done, then you get rolling on ESG. Okay. Let's get along. Yes. Assess the significance of it. Measure how significant an issue affects the stakeholder. Consider the scale, scope, irremediability, and likelihood of the impact. While doing a questionnaire, please consider the scale, the scope, the irremediability, and the likelihood of the impact. Please do that. As I said, stakeholder surveys, interviews, expert opinions are quite why expert why do companies engage consultants? Because of these things. Because suppose I do not know where to go, what to do, and all, so that's why they engage. So experts also do. Sometimes companies, I exactly know companies, like Tata Steel, Tata Motors, they also engage experts in terms of climate experts from United Nations, from IPCC, to give their opinion on their material topics. So hope you understand how top corporates really do materiality. Of course, surveys are there, but even after surveys, if you see, we have to do, in typical researchers term, a focused group discussion. You know, to make, uh, sometimes we get the survey results and we see that it is quite skewed. So then resurvey has to be done. So before that, we also do interviews or discussions. Okay, interviews are typically done for directors, the board of directors, board of governors, those are people, and surveys for also interviews are done for sometimes the regulators. So suppose I say the pollution control board, suppose I say your land revenue officer, suppose I say the the GST inspector, the GST, the commissioner. So those all things, interviews are quite done because these people do not respond to your surveys. Then we develop a materiality after we're getting the result, we analyze the entire data. We get the severity impact versus the stakeholder concern, like we saw it in Nestle. Okay, the stakeholder concerns have to be in one either vertical or horizontal, and your severity. Then you map it across. So while mapping it, you can see materiality metrics of any company, any top Nifty top 50 company, they would have done the same thing. Then after getting the result and all, we seek the validation from the senior management and the board. So then, after that, we align our goals and reporting requirements according to that. And of course, we also see that the corporate strategy is aligned towards our material topics. Because sometimes you'll feel, a corporate does have a materiality assessment, but while the mission, vision, and the strategic statement doesn't speak of it. So which is quite wrong. And why this is important, the ESG scoring, the scores you get in ESG, the impact in the CRISIL ratings, the ESG ratings, the CRISIL ratings, maybe the DJSI score, the international rating agency, they do see these things. So please consider, the material topics while you are framing a corporate strategy. So nowadays it is quite important. So reporting and disclosure. So you present the material topics. Then while drafting, we are talking of a GRI standard. So you do it. Any queries till now? Any queries? No. Great. So now let's go to finance materiality. Finance materiality, the topic finance materiality comes with SASB. Okay, SASB is of course a standard. SASB is quite relevant to the finance sector. I would say the finance sector. People have various definitions. They go that SASB can be implemented, but if you see, SASB has real implications on the BFSI sector. Real implications on the reality. I do not, I'm a person, I speak, quite blunt on it, because I never seen that the SASB coming into, people consider income, but SASB, normally the finance materiality comes to BFSI sector. So, these are all the same, same kind of, procedure you follow, but in a financial mindset. So, financial ESG topic, financially material ESG topic. So when I say that, what comes to your mind?
Uh, Any issue that impact the business of the company?
Great. As simple as that. Thanks, Alok. So suppose ESG topic, we know ESG. Okay. Financially material. Suppose I do not have, suppose I am a banker. Okay. I give debt to companies. Normally, no, banks give debt to companies. Prior giving debt, I did not do it ESG due diligence. Okay, environmental, social, and governance, and the company failed in those measures only. Like suppose it flawed the environmental rules and it went, the company shut down, and my debt goes to NPA. So those due diligence are a part of financial material. So ESG due diligence is one of the things. So those are the few things that comes under the financial material issues. So let's understand that, because why I'm talking, people might differ, people might talk of, but these topics, financially material topics, are quite relevant to the financial world. The insurance. Suppose I give insurance. I'm an insurance company. I give insurance to large companies. B2B in a B2B transaction. And the companies, the company, gets into trouble, is the other. So I'll be in a loss. The account itself will be in loss. So hence the ESG has to be integrated. So while talking ESG, remember one of the component of governance is economy also. It's not the board composition, what is the composition of the male female ratio or the ethical part. One of the part is economy. Remember one thing, while in ESG, everybody is a ESG. We're talking of ESG. Let's, in today's relevant business world, the ESG has to be integrated to your main balance sheet. Otherwise, it will still remain as one of the external, supporting department in your company. That will be only important while there is ESG audits or audit from your one of the great clients sitting in Europe. That's all. Otherwise, you cannot integrate. So ESG cannot be a department in silos. It has to the system, the ESG system and process and procedure has to be integrated into each and every department. One of the examples I'm telling, how it can be integrated. Suppose I work in procurement. Okay. I have to do social due diligence before, onboarding a supplier, environmental due diligence, and the governance. How good the governance is, how good how are the employees and other things are taken care of, that, the vendor or the supplier, and how good they are in environmental aspects and impacts. So please make sure that you integrate ESG into the system. It cannot work in silos. Now, I've seen companies failing to do that, many companies failing to do that, and they end up, they only end up hiring good and better and best people in their ESG department so that they get their thing compliance ready. That's all. Please note, this is not something compliance, this is something that is there. And ESG is not something that has come from a sudden, it doesn't have, there was nothing and it suddenly rained. It had, we had environmental compliances, we had pollution control board, we had, like provident funds, insurance and all, we already had. So it is only that we are trying to go deeper into these issues. We had labor rights, we had human rights for social causes. Governance, of course, we had board, board ethics, board committee, board evaluation, everything we had. It is only that the terminology has evolved. not changed. It has evolved, and please ingrain all those things in your system. Otherwise, as I told you, there will be ESG department working in silos for only for compliance. That's all. Okay, moving on. Like I said, here, assess impact on business performance. This is we are talking of finance material. How ESG factor influence revenue, costs, risk exposure, and asset valuation. Use a financial model to estimate potential impacts of ESG risk and opportunity. Okay, let's take an example to understand this. Suppose, yes, Naresh. Okay, suppose one of my material topic is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, I have taken a target, that is one of my material topic. I have taken a target that from 30%, I would like to increase it to 50%. So to get to 50%, I have to incur some cost. Okay, I have to hire more women employee, more other employees of other genders, transgenders. We have to employ everything, because then I have to make washrooms for everybody to accommodate all those things. That incurs some cost. I would also see, after doing so, what affects my revenue. Does that affect my revenue? If it does, then my material topic, diversity, equity, and inclusion, backfires. Then that is not my material topic, because I haven't analyzed my financial risk on that. I don't advocate that diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not my personal view, neither. I've just taken an example for that. For every topic, let's suppose we take carbon emission. I'll reduce my carbon emission by 80%. What I did is I put on expensive equipment. Okay. The filter, then the revenue cost, the operational cost is very high. Then I saw my electricity bills are going up. The operation, then I have to change my filters, because if I'm capturing the carbon, then the filters, there will be filtering effect. Filters are high. So is that affecting my bottom line? So those are things we need to analyze prior making decisions on material topics, especially finance material. And now I would suggest, why now you see I take double materiality as one of, because now whenever I consult, I take my client to that extent that please do double materiality. A finance materiality and impact materiality correlated. Okay. Because that gives you a better idea of how you are there in the ESG performance score. Otherwise, you'll be just, I will be just disclosing these are my material topics, and I am not, readily, financially, I haven't done anything. So when it comes to financial, then my board will ask me question. You have wasted so much money in ESG, these initiative, those initiative. The result is zero. Rather negative impact on the bottom line. So to get all these things done, that's why finance materiality is very good to this BFSI sector. If you see the steps also, they also say the same. The same, disclose with and the investor expectation. And of course, it has to align with TCF, the DUST, and the ISSB recommendation. The last and the best thing is the double materiality. Double materiality, the topics, the procedure, the steps are the same, but Here, for a topic, the financial aspects and impact are considered. Like we took example of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like we took example of carbon emission. Then suppose I said, suppose I take energy management or energy as one of my material topic, and I take a target that I will reduce the energy consumption by suppose 50%. I have to procure new energy equipments. There will be a retrofit. So while doing a retrofit, I have to see all my electrical equipments are aligned, because if one of my equipments is of 1970s or 1980s or 1990s, and I put a very new equipment here, they cannot align electrical. They can align, but that will create problems. So hence, these things are to be considered while we do a double materiality. Double materiality gives you a robust structure, the financial considerations, the non-financial, the physical considerations while taking the topics. The steps are the same. Remember, the steps are the same, only the impact, the aspect and impact evaluation changes. That's all. Now, I was only thinking of in a physical, in a brand, in a physical view. Now I'm thinking of financially. Suppose a company overspends in CSR, overspends, then that will affect the balance sheet. Okay, just to get a good branding and to cover up some social aspect, I cannot spend beyond my pocket in the social aspect, in the social forum, in local communities. Of course, in an Indian context, the listed companies have to do 2% or 5% or 3% of the profit. I do not have that number, but yes, of course, 2% as a percent. But if I overspend, sometimes companies spend more, but if I overspend, so that will again give me a pain. And what happens is this has a cascading effect. The expectations of stakeholders increase. Suppose I spend 100 rupees today and my pocket size was 50 rupees. So next year, the stakeholder will ask for 130 rupees, but my pocket remains same 50 rupees. So here we have to see revenue, cost, and the impact. So hence, that is all I want to say, because a very short and the primary thing. I do not want to stretch it more. Any queries in this last half an hour, I would like to answer.
Yes, sir. I have one query.
Yes.
Sir, what is the difference between due diligence and risk assessment?
Okay. Do you invest in stocks, Alok?
No, sir.
Do you invest somewhere?
No, sir. Currently, I am not investing anything anywhere.
Okay. Do you spend? Do you spend anything?
Spend anything?
You would be spending something. No? You have money. You be spending something, buying a laptop, buying a mobile.
Yes. That things I am doing.
Okay. So what do you consider?
If anything, just I'm taking one example. If I'm going to buy a 4-wheeler or 2-wheeler, then I consider that must be efficiency should be good, and that must be run in a long term.
So you check fuel efficiency.
Yes.
Okay. You check the EMIs. Would it affect your pocket? Okay. So you check, all those things. Then what is due diligence? I will take the brand, which brand you are taking. Okay. The dealership. Okay. Or the reputation of the dealership. Right.
Yes.
So did you understand the difference between this?
So in industry,
the risk you are taking is, suppose you want to buy a car, okay? You are willing to buy a car at the risk. You are assessing the risk of your pocket. Okay, the monthly EMI plus the petrol or the diesel or the fuel expenses. Okay, at your own end.
Right, sir.
And also the parking, if you have to incur a parking charge. Okay, also your mobility.
Right.
Then what is due diligence? You did a due diligence while procuring the, you check the brand. Suppose you want to go Hyundai, Maruti, Tata and all. Okay, which is doing good, which vehicle is doing, which brand is doing good, which vehicle is of the brands, which vehicle is doing good. Okay, which has a long term benefit. Okay, suppose you would need to buy a hybrid vehicle. Okay,
Right.
this is the difference between the risk. You assess the risk at your end and the due diligence at the other. Got it?
Got it, sir.
Great. Yes. Anybody else?
I have another question.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Yeah, sir, you are talking about DEI. Then it was striking in my mind. Ki DEI is really a material topic or not?
Yes, yes. You can check. You can check. I'll tell you any nifty top 100 companies. DEI is one of the material topics. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Are you a researcher by any sense? I do not know.
No, sir. I'm working professional and
So DEI is a material topic. Yes, of course. Why DEI is important, I'll tell you. It has some effect on decision making. Diversified opinions give you good strategic decisions. Diversified opinions give you good strategic decisions and way forward. Okay. Otherwise, it will be only a singular mindset going in. So diversified, suppose a company headquartered in Gurgaon, FMCG company wants to go to the southern part of India to their products. If they do not have someone from southern part of India, and by the way, I'll tell you, it's the diversity, equity, and inclusion doesn't mean male, female. It is the entire demography. It's not male, female. Corporates do misunderstand by male, female, but it's not male, female. It's the demographic, the entire demographic world. I'll tell you.
got it, sir.
Anyone else? I understand, it's a very short session and all, but I wanted to give a crisp of what it is. Just doing a monologue because the practicality has to be, seen. Yes. Any queries, please?
Mr. Sir, I have one question.
Yes.
What is the actual scope of ESG?
Actual
as,
scope of
ESG in present corporate job profile and others? What is the scope of ESG at this point of time? Because usually it is a new term. Most of the institutions do not have ESG in their portfolio as a subject or but at the same time, if you see, we have been talking about the climate action and sustainability, so on and so forth. So what is the scope of ESG or sustainability in the corporate world?
So on a very practical note, I'll tell you, nowadays corporates are taking it as a separate department, but the top 1% of the corporates have understood that it cannot be. So ESG like a department in procurement, ESG is also a department, and it needs, and to understand that, let's see, every company is different. Okay, every company's mission vision is different. Okay, so ESG, okay, ESG of every company, the ESG goals, the has to be different. So there has to be a brain that will, advise, or that will work towards this segment to align, align these corporate decisions, the core corporate decisions and the ESG decisions, and they give rise to earning. So that is how the currently top 1%, rest all, compliance based, I'll tell you. But still, I'd say in ESG, there is, see, now the gamut of BRSR is 250 companies, assurance. So once it covers the entire gamut, the 5,000 or 8,000 companies of listed companies, every company would need a ESG person, like CSR. Manavendra sir, if you remember CSR, now every company has a CSR person. Every listed company has a CSR person or a CSR department. So hence, the scope is immense. The scope is immense. So if you see 8,000 companies listed in Nifty, 8,000 companies, almost 8,000 plus companies will someday by 2027 or 2028 or max by 2030 will need a ESG person in their company. So that is how it is going, sir.
At the same time, if I say, because sustainability is a transdisciplinary area, today, be it is engineering, management, or any discipline, if you talk about, we have been using this concept in silos.
You can
But
say
at the
that.
same time, this is something which need a transdisciplinary approach. Why is it so? Because in corporates, people are talking about ESG, though it is in the, particularly if you talk about from the Indian perspective, but it is something which is actually important, as you are saying. Though in academic institutions, very few who have been talking about this, or they have included sustainability as their course. Though if you talk about, like, if we check out on the LinkedIn profile, when I usually check out, I find out, like, it's at this point of time, like, too many people are working in the same domain. But in academics, if we see, it is somewhere like a pure vacuum is there with respect to this specific area.
Yes, I would say yes, because if CSR, I do not know about the curriculums, but CSR is one of the mandate to teach in curriculum in B schools. I do not know about the other B schools, but one of B schools, they do teach CSR. Okay, so likewise, I would also suggest to go for sustainability as a topic, at least level 1, level 2. Level 1 can be mandate, level 2 can be optional. So at least there will be some awareness about sustainability. So like, I have seen in these European nations, so 2 levels of sustainability in their core, B school curriculum they have introduced, even in Singapore also. So level 1 is like same for everybody, those who are taking finance, operations, marketing, or do any. Level 2 is for people or the candidates having more interest in ESG. So that can be there. Even people have finance sustainability as one of the courses. So the courses have to be developed. One of the hindrances of this is, of course, the pool of faculty. We need to also understand how general management, corporate strategy, or even financial management integrates with ESG. Let's understand. So there is a boom of ESG jobs in these now, but what we are having is, there is a dearth. Because why there is a dearth? People see, when candidates come, they only have done a certificate. Okay, and nowadays online certificates are available, plenty of ESGs. Hence, yes, Arvind ji.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So I'm going to ask you the two questions. The first one is related to the questionnaire that you have mentioned that the questionnaire has to be unique. Because whenever we are going to ask from the respondent, we need a proper sample formatting that it has to be unique throughout the industry. But but it has been observed that when you are just trying to take answers related to a specific domain, not everyone is having expert or have information about other departments also. So that's why even in the company, they just try to float the section wise that one section is going to be given to the HR department or the operations department, and they are going to fill their part for proper fulfilling the questionnaire. So in such cases, it becomes very difficult to get the answers. Don't you feel that, sir?
It becomes so. That's why I advise the companies to do awareness sessions for each of the stakeholders. At least they get awareness. At least they get awareness about those topics. See, suppose I'm a supplier to your company. So Arvindji, when I supply to your company, I also need to see if my payment is coming on time. So that is one of the governance issues. I will check. Okay.
Okay.
So those all things, even the external stakeholders, I have done that, and it is quite a tedious process. Companies do it like in a month or 15 days, but I have seen and I have done it. It's a very tedious process. Companies, good companies who are very fair to all of their stakeholders and do consider ESG as one of the strategies, corporate strategy, main corporate strategy, in trying to integrate into corporate strategy. They consider all these things while doing materiality assessment.
Okay. So my second
Good
question.
evening, sir. No, sir, please go ahead. Arvind, sir, please go ahead.
Yes.
So my second question is that I'm a student of marketing and I'm able to relate the ESG concept with the CSR. So I have seen that it is like ESG has to be voluntarily initiative driven by the investor as well as including they have to taken into consideration the consumer sentiment also. So as it is going to be a very expensive process, is there any statutory body who is going to train the companies or is going to provide the solution how they can implement the ESG in their companies? Is there any bodies?
See, normally companies take help of consultants. There is no statutory body that will help you out. Of course, BRSR is there. BRSR forms the very basic. If you see BRSR, that's why SEBI, the sitting and the standing committee and the operating committee of SEBI who has formed the BRSR, they have given it like a questionnaire so that companies do not really face difficulty while filling it up. Okay. And if you see BRSR in Indian context, it is fairly simple. The words are fairly simple. Unlike other global standards, I won't comment and name those standards, but they're fairly bit more complicated. So that can be seen. So there
Okay,
is
right now BRSR is being followed by the companies.
yes. So BRSR is quite in Indian listed companies are following BRSR. But in a global GRI, I would say is one of the basic. One of the basic. I won't say it's the basic, but one of the basic. Yes, Deepak Ranjan.
Yeah, hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Sir, this is a good session, sir. And my basic question as a research student, sir, what are the main things for freshers to know who want to work in this ESG reporting area, sir? Basic thing. First, start that reading and all that. First,
You
basic.
read ESG reports. You read integrated reports, not annual reports, integrated reports. You read materiality assessment. So you can start doing that.
Sir,
Of course,
like
you can
in
do
reporting, like in India, BRSR and other like GRI, TCFD, and other reporting tools and standards are there. So for like India and other country, why not one standard are using, sir?
it's a evolving standard. If you see, sustainability has been evolving uh, since long. So we have come along with UN SDGs, then GRI, you name it. So standards are being, and it is getting updated every 2 to 3 years. So we are really in a phase of evolution of this world. Okay, somebody, you cannot be expert, or you have to be continuously reading.
Yes.
Okay, and one thing for a fresher, I would say, rather doing all these courses, you read yourself and all. Of course, courses are important. It gives some star mark to your CV, but do an internship at least. 3 months, 6 months, a long-term internship that would help the practical experience.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Nivedita, long-standing
Sir,
case.
I do have a question. Sir, I'm working in the field of SMEs. So, sir, I have seen some papers. They are basically China based, where they have data sources. But in India, when we talk about sustainability, ESG, where do our Indian SMEs stand? And what is the future of Indian SMEs in this field?
Okay, great
Sir,
question.
actually, I'm not looking for a theoretical perspective. I want to know the ground reality of it. Is it going in air in Indian perspective, like they are writing to get the research papers published, or there is something happening with Indian SMEs?
There is, of course, happening, because when there is a supplier's due diligence coming up, okay, when BRSR says some 70 odd percentage of your suppliers have to be ESG compliant. That means you have to get your suppliers. Your suppliers are not tier 1 companies. Your suppliers are always SMEs. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So the suppliers are in pressure right now. So I have seen clusters, food clusters, small auto clusters, auto ancillary clusters in Coimbatore, Chennai, in Manesar also. They have that pressure of, because your OEM may be Maruti, Tata, is ESG compliant. So now they want their suppliers to be ESG compliant so that they can, globally trade. So yes.
Sir, but actually, my query is that no doubt the upstream participants in the supply chain are definitely these SMEs. But sir, SMEs are small medium industries. Sir, like small industries, they are not that able to, like medium. They have enough fund and turnover, so they can adjust with this thing. But what about the small firms? And where do the
I told you, in one of my last things, ESG is not something that has come in sudden. We have ESG. Okay. Suppose a small company, okay, producing only nut bolts for specified nut bolts for a auto manufacturer. Suppose, okay, it has 8 to 10 employees, maybe 20 employees, and a director, and 1 to 2 directors. Okay. So it would give ESI PF to the company. It would have some insurance at least. We are not talking of fully getting ESG compliant of SMEs. We are not, and it's not a possibility. It's not a possibility, Nivedita. If you see, it's not a possibility. I would say it would have a ESG report. To do those things. It would have that certificate. It's not possible. It's not possible for a firm doing that. Even for in agriculture, I've seen that those who supply packets or something like that, they you get the basic certifications done, but it's not possible. It's not possible. So the basic things you can categorize. There has to be some in environment. Okay, the waste segregations, then the waste segregation or the something like energy efficient tools and all. No, the small things you can, the data can be there. The compliance can be there. You cannot have a complete compliance. SME, of course, getting things done to the SMEs, the OEMs take the charge. I'd say large companies do their supplier ESG audit at their own cost. At their own cost. OEMs take their own cost to do their supply due diligence, and they give them the gap. This is the gap you have. This is what you would be doing in next 2 years. So they do it.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Ruchika.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Mishra. This is Ruchika. You did mention, like, in the initial stages of your presentation that you were also interested into research, and you did, while you were talking about impact materiality, that you were looking at IT companies, 3 different IT companies, and you were looking at the impact of those companies' policies, like positive as well as negative.
Not
My
policy.
Okay.
So don't, I'll tell you. So what, normally consultants do have a mistake. They compare while doing a materiality assessment or choosing the material topics. They first see the policies. Please do not see the company policy, existing company policies, because material assessment, once it is done fresh, it is fresh. Then then we will align those material topics, the policies towards these material topics. Will not align the policies towards them. So it's not the vice versa. Please.
Okay. So my question to you is, you did talk about positive as well as negative. Positive, every company will try to advertise, every company will try to market that they are doing positives. But how do you collect data for the negative part? Like, how do you know that's not working or it's going in
It's not
like?
negative. It's not negative. I tell you.
Mhm.
So where I lack, where I have to, what is a material topic? The topic that are important to my firm, important to my firm. So when I talk, I'm doing good at something. Okay, I've done suddenly good at something, and I have to put my focus on something, and that is negative. Okay, that is how I choose my resources to what of these topics. That is what I'm not talking negative. It's not negative.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Yes, anybody?
There is a question in the chat box. Dear Madan sir, please ask your question. Unmute yourself. You can ask the question. Dr. Madan sir. Okay, I'll ask the question on his behalf. So the first question asked by him is, who should hold the major stake and responsibility of achieving the SDG, the corporate sector, the government, or the common man?
So let's go for a debate that nobody can answer. It's a collective effort. Next question. It's debatable. We can go. Everybody holds responsibility. It's everybody's job. Even
Okay,
it's my
moving
job,
to-
your job, everybody's job.
Okay, moving to the second question. Which option is better? Importing finished products or manufacturing make Indian model as far as pollution and cost of pollution control are considered?
This is actually a good question. Okay. There is the solution, not the answer to this. See, again the ESG comes. You compare the economics and the ESG factors to both the things. Okay, so make in India, what is going good, and importing the finished product, what is. So while importing, you have to consider the emissions done by the transport, shipping, any transport you are considering. So you consider that whichever gives you a better score, you opt for that.
Any more questions from the participant side? Any participants for any questions? Okay. Okay, it's fine.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, your presentation was very excellent, sir, because we are enjoyed today.
I only see. I am talk because I talk sense, sir. Because you have to give them some practical, theoretical things. Whatever written in standards, everybody can read in internet nowadays.
Yeah, it was very live, and you could see that people are interacting more. So that was the great success of this program today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for imparting invaluable insights. Your intellectually stimulating session has laid the groundwork for all of us to gain knowledge and grow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye, sir. Dear participants,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Nivedita, please go ahead.
Take your yes, sir.
No. Actually, I was talking to Nivedita, sir.
Okay. Dear participants,